If someone says football is my purpose, is that a false statement to say?
Football is my vehicle, right? The purpose is on the other side of football. Maybe they want to take care of their mom. Maybe they want to get their family out the hood. Maybe they want to get their family in a better situation.
What's going on, family? On this episode of Lear Diaries, I sit down with former NFL player turned founder and CEO Padric Scott. We'll talk about finding purpose beyond your profession, navigating the pivot, and why you can't allow what you do to become who you are. This is a conversation about identity, purpose, and becoming who you're called to be. Let's get into it.
Padric, my guy, it's a pleasure to have you on here.
What's up, Justin, man? The honor is mine, man. I'm so proud of you and all the things I've seen you do since, getting to know you for a couple years now. So when you asked me to join this, most people I might have told no, but I always say yes, for sure. That said, I encourage you, as I've always done, the power of giving back is everything. No one stands on their own, too. They stand on the shoulders of giants before them. And so to anyone listen to this podcast, I instill in them and pray a spirit of just reinvestment into people with fruit you won't see for years. And I think that is legacy. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. But hey, let's crack open your diary, man. We're opening up your diary, first few pages. Who was Padric Scott before he became highly established in business, before he became an NFL player? What is your story?
Have that level of fruit is a testament to a great upbringing. And I even got to give love and homage to my grandparents, because my granddad was a farmer, Madison, Florida. My grandmother, educator in Long Island. That's who raised, my dad. And then growing up in a segregated South, my grandmother was a single mother because my grandfather drowned, raising, 4 kids and at a time where job opportunities were few. And anyone hearing this could get biased depending on their background. However, it's just the message to take away. And so as we would drive to Atlanta, Georgia for like football games, FAMU playing Tennessee State, we had to pass through Thomasville and all these other, southern Georgia cities that had some very large cotton fields. And I never forget, as we would drive through that area, my dad and mom would always go, look outside. You see those cotton fields. Your ancestors worked those cotton fields in this hot sun, blazing, temperatures through the roof. And they had no choice. And with no choice, what kept them going was a vision. And that vision was one day you three would have an opportunity that they didn't have. And man, that has set with me for forever. That in my soul, how could I complain? How can I, take my foot off the gas when, my great, I'm only like 3 generations removed, because my grandparents were born like the 19 teens. Their parents were born like 18, roughly, like 70, I want to say. And as a result, I guess my grandparents' grandparents were slaves. And so gives me, I think, this perspective as a child. It made me, work hard. It made me appreciate every little thing I got. My parents did a great job of kind of raising my sister, brother, myself off a merit system. And that is, they never gave us an allowance or anything like that. You had to work for it. And part of that work was, it was tied to our academic excellence. And so they would not award anything less than an A. So if you got a B, you get nothing. And so we had to get A's. We had to be in music. We had to play sports. We had to be multifaceted. And that was their expectation. They had a standard, my parents did. They didn't just let us say no. Like you had to if you were going to be in this household. And I never looked at it as an issue. It was a privilege. Let's crack open the diary. And my brother, when he was 9 years old, got into almost near fatal car accident. So I was 1. And so, of course, I don't remember that at 1. However, what I do remember when I was around 6 or so, how upset and sad he'd be because he couldn't play sports with his friends. Because, the doctor said he shouldn't be here. Like they actually pronounced him dead at the scene. It's just my dad in a medical community that he knew, he got people to work on my brother who assigned waivers and liability and just got to work. And so seeing him, my big brother, I love my big brother. That's my boy. And the fact that he was sad And here's my hero, him and my sister. I told him, hey man, don't worry. Like, I'm gonna get to the NFL for us. Like, I told him that at 6 years old. And, as I made that statement, you don't think about what you sign up when you make that statement. You just go. And I just went, man. It was work ethic. It was playing sports. It was killing in football because I wasn't just playing for me. Every number I wore was my brother's number when he was allowed to play sports. Because I wanted him to look out on that field and see him, right? And that's his little brother, going and playing on behalf. And I think that's just an issue a lot of us sometimes have, to take some of those younger stories and tie them into like adult success. Many people are selfish and they don't realize it. It's about them. What can I do for me? That said, if you listen to my story, when I was 6, I was doing it for my brother. And what most people fail to realize, the power of being other focused, when you have something bigger than you, that's more important than you, right? A bigger philosophy or goal, it magnetizes you, it pulls you in the direction that you're trying to go. And it's actually like one of the most selfless things you can do that benefits you is to have a goal about something or someone else that's not you. It will bring the best out of you. So that said, that pulled me, man. It kept my discipline. It kept my commitment, the grit, the resilience to deal with the head trash, to deal with playing 3 sports, having all AP class course load. And I'm thankful for all that because it taught me time management. It taught me responsibility. It taught me how to handle pressure. My coach said something today about pressure when I had him talk to my team. And he said, pressure does not build character. Pressure reveals character. I was like, man, that's powerful. Right? When you're under pressure, how you act, how you respond, it says all about who you are. And, 3 sports, 6 AP classes. My grandmother had Alzheimer's, so I also was a caretaker. It's all between the ages of 14 and 18. And so I think those were some pivotal years that defined my work ethic, my no-nonsense attitude, yet my ability to smile and have fun through it all was from those areas. So that's, man, just that key upbringing. That's a lot of areas. And I think the last thing before high school finished, and I'll turn it back over to you just to talk around the early years, and I can go forward from there, was high school. And that is, I was an undersized lineman. Everyone thinks I play linebacker or safety when they see me now. However, I was 300 plus pounds in college. However, when I went to high school, I was about 198. And so that said, I was so strong, they wanted me on the line. So they beefed me up in high school. I went from like 198, 200 to 280 in high school. And so as a result, they wanted me to be a center at first, and I played left tackle at 6 foot. So, matter of fact, then I'd probably say 5'11". I grew to 6 foot in college. And so, as an undersized lineman, I'd hear often, you may not get to college. You may not have what it takes. However, what everyone didn't know is that I made a promise to my brother. And it didn't matter how undersized I was or how the odds were stacked against me. I made a promise. When I make a promise, got to keep it.
When you share your story, it's the epitome of how you do anything is how you do everything.
And that's something Nick Saban says, right? Where you do one thing, how you do all things. And, something my dad instilled in us early kind of stems from our fraternity, whose motto is achievement in every field of human endeavor. And so my dad would tell us, and my mom would stamp the message, is that, hey, if you're going to do it, be the best at it. Don't just commit to it for the sake of saying I'm going to do it and you're not committed, And so that was a common theme in our household. And that is, if you're going to do it, be the best at it. And I think that's a small ask because I think it's actually more taxing to the nervous system to commit to something and suck at it. Because now when you choose to suck at it, meaning be lazy about it and not do the work, it's like a cloud that hangs over your head because you can be doing more. You got more in you. You've been procrastinating. You've been avoiding the work. So I think that to me is actually more taxing to the mental than saying, let me just do the work so I don't got to think about it. I mean, think about people who procrastinate for an exam. That thing hangs over their head until it's test day. And that is coming from somebody who procrastinated for exams because of all my workload. That said, what I learned from that and what I've matured from that is if I just do the work, I'm actually more at peace.
That's what I said. Growing up, what was the most life-changing conversation you've ever had?
Give me an age range, and I'll tell you what the answer is. Between what ages?
I say high school and college.
Let's go college. So that's easy. Dang, I can't get emotional and do this. Most pivotal conversation I had in college was when I transferred from Stanford to FAMU. Probably one of the most pivotal conversations in my life, to be honest. So today, for example, I asked my college position coach, who's our assistant and head coach at FAMU, to speak to my firm, to let them know what love and standard looks like, as he did for me. And while everyone's trying to like tell me about how great I could be and the things I could do at the table, my position coach spoke up. And so my position coach, he played with the Steelers in the 70s, Mean Joe Green, Terry Bradshaw. He played with the Giants and Lawrence Taylor. He played with all those guys. And so he's cut from a different cloth, let's just say that. And when he speaks, everyone listens. He's like 6'4", 3+, right? He's a commanding presence. And at the end of the table, he goes, hey, everybody listen up. Shuts everybody up at the table. And he goes, Scott, you want to make it? You want to make it to the NFL? I say, yes, sir. He said, you come to FAMU. Promise you today, I'm going to get you to the NFL. Look me right in my eye. And in that moment, I trusted him. So I made a decision to put my college, steps in his hands. And FAMU was a leader anyway, just because of my relationship with fam. That's it. That sealed the deal. Let's just say the next 4 years of my life, between 19 and 23, that man worked the hell out of me. I mean, it was times where I thought he didn't like me, because he let somebody get away with an ME or mistake on the field. Or if I made the same ME, he'd shoot me up. And as a result, though, it's not like I had a choice to like back out. Again, we don't have transfer portals, so I had to stick it out. And the sticking out, though, I had to put my foot down and just deal with it and get better. And what ended up happening was I just continued to raise my level of play to his expectations, his standard. And man, I just evolved. I evolved. And, senior year, man, he actually alluded to it. I got some injuries. I got hollowed on a couple plays. A team tried to take me out. I won't say the university. And they did. And I fought back in that injury during that year because he was there to coach me through it. He was there with me through that head trash to recover from an injury. You know exactly what that's like. And at the end of the season, I tore my pec. Bench pressing my boy Hepburn at his agent's facility, bounced back from that. And sure enough, despite all that adversity, that last year coming from a smaller school, man, I didn't get drafted, which some of that time I missed, I know it hurt, and it is what it is. However, though, I had teams lined up with contracts before that draft ended and signed a priority free agent contract. And the first phone call I got was from my coach. And I was out like celebrating, so I missed it when he called me. But he left a voicemail that I keep to this day. And I never forget the next day, Justin, I went to go see him. And when I went to go see him, I walked through that door and he just started crying. He was so proud. He's like, I'm so proud of you. You just kept crying. I started crying. And what hit me in that moment is what love looks like. It hit me in that moment what sacrifice looks like. It hit me in that moment what care looks like. And he had been so hard on me because he made me a promise. He made me a promise when I was 19 to invest in me so that when I would wake up at 23, the fruit would be there. And man, that talk, that convo, it changed my life, man, because it instilled in me a level of work ethic that, yes, was there when I was younger. He brought it out in me exponentially. And, I wish I would have leaned more into some of those lessons in my time in the league because I think I think paralysis by analysis really slowed my play in the league. However, as I transitioned to like the professional world, had great mentors there, I was able to took what he taught me and now from a mature standpoint, apply it. And so, man, he easily was probably my most influential, if you're talking like high school, college and below, that conversation there changed the course of the university I chose. It changed the course of my career, maybe not ever touching the NFL to touching it because someone who had gotten there and did the thing saw in me something that he could trust and believe in, and he brought it out of me. And man, I'm so thankful.
So fast forward, you go undrafted, you end up signing with the Arizona Cardinals. You had a brief stint over there. How was your experience with the Cardinals? And then I wanted to ask you, how was your transition going from football to business?
You know, my brief time with the Cardinals, which is very short-lived, truly looking back, I think what it taught me is you're just one moment away from like having everything you want. And you could be one moment away from losing it all. And so at the end of the day, the best part is being in the present moment. And I would say the biggest takeaway I got from my time there at 23, um, I actually would credit it to Tyrann Mathieu. He doesn't know this. Hope he hears this one day. And I remember when we were all rookies, he was balling out of rookie camp, OTAs, training camp. And then when we were kicking it that summer, he kind of just, we asked him one day, like, man, how are you balling out like this? Like, you know, what are you doing? And he may not remember this, but I do. And his response was, man, I don't know. I just see myself making the play and I'll make it. And, you know, that didn't make sense to me then, because I'm an overthinker at that time. However, as I kind of went through life, what that lesson taught me is the power of faith. You got to see yourself making the play long before you actually make it, and then you'll make it. You know, some people call that bravado. That's just faith itself. And a play may not just be on the field. That play is in life. That play is in business. That play is in the weight room. That play is when you're driving. Like if I can think beyond this moment, I can typically create it. And that even what he quoted, you know, is written in one of my favorite books, Be Your Future Self by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And what Dr. Benjamin Hardy says is when somebody thinks from right now, they make decisions in a myopic lens, a small lens. That said, in order to make great decisions, he says, you have to think about your future self and what they're doing, because now you can make better decisions based off where you're trying to go. Because what he says is every decision we make in the present moment, it is either an investment or a cost in your future self. And I choose to make investments in my future self. And so that was probably the biggest takeaway from my time in the Cardinals. And before, kind of like you brought up Tyrann there, T-Matt, it was, and the other takeaway probably got me in my career today, and that was just the power of brand. You know, as I'm playing for them, here I am trying to fight for $1 million contract or two. And I realized I'm playing for billionaires. And I think that hit me. Like this Arizona Cardinals brand is $1 billion brand. And it made me start thinking about finances and things and investing and how to drive value. It set me off. And that's what, when I got cut, you mentioned my transition into business. It was a slow drip transition. The first off season, I got a job with SunTrust, now Truist Bank. I was an assistant manager there. And then next season, I started playing the Arena League 2 years, and I did banking in between. So I was 14, 15. And in 2016, 2017, I played in the Canadian Football League, and I stayed in banking then. So truthfully, business was my way to bridge the gap with football. And it just turns out I ended up being pretty good at the side. And what ended up happening was between 2017 and 18, after I got cut from the CFL, I was pretty much done with football. And more, I was just done with the volatility of life. And I remember surrendering to God. And this is probably my next most important conversation was when I told God, I'm tired of fighting with him. And that is, I want him to align my steps with his desire, his will for me. And man, that's when, you know, the opportunities to kind of start my private wealth firm and leave the banking world, you know, started to, you know, arise. And I would say, here's what that transition looks like, Justin, for any athlete listening to this. It was a death. It was a death. I died. To be quite frank, I died and I feel reborn. I understand this concept. What most people miss even about scripture or any text, I don't care where you're looking at, Greek mythology, whatever. The only way to be reborn is to die. And what I mean by that is you got to go through the tough thing. And it's a major theme from the Bible. Resurrection can only follow a crucifixion. And so for me, that crucifixion was dealing with the pain of not playing ball no more. And I'll say in my mid-20s, man, sometimes I had thoughts of not being here, as I'm sure a lot of my other athlete friends have experienced, being so low in the dumps. And the reason we experience that is because you have an identity shift and an identity crisis. You know, from the time of 6, I made a promise. Like, I'm not thinking about identity at the age of 6. I'm just thinking about making a promise to my big brother. That said, in making that promise, it shifted my identity to this thing called an athlete. So now when that identity is starting to exist no more, it's not like I'm trying to be an athlete out of bravado or braggadocious. It's just, that's what I chose to be as a child. So now that it's going away, no one's there to tell me that I'm experiencing grief, and that grief makes you question everything about life. And I'm just so thankful that I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And in doing so, doors started to open. And I would say one of my major lessons through that struggle, that transition, I share this, and I pray any athlete at whatever stage can hear me. Please don't know this is not just isolated to athletes. Many retirees when they're 60 go through this because now they're switching from working all their life to not working. So really it's identity transition. And what I want people to realize is this: their career and what they do is not who they are. What you do is not who you are. And I've heard a lot of athletes say this: oh man, after the game, I lost purpose. No, you just stop putting your foot forward. Because what ends up happening, we end up loving sports because what sports can do for us. It's the income, it's the impact, it's the potential recognition, right? It's all that. And so we love sports for what it can do. However, somewhere along the way, we confuse sports as who we are. It is not the same.
Let me ask you this. If someone says football is my purpose, is that a false statement to say?
Football is my vehicle, right? The purpose is on the other side of football. Maybe they want to take care of their mom. Maybe they want to get their family out of the hood. Maybe they want to get their family in a better situation. Maybe they want to make their dad proud, mom proud. That's their purpose. It's just they confuse that with the sport itself. Maybe they wanted to make it out.
I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. So you're saying we all have different purposes.
Bingo.
Okay, makes sense.
Think about it, Justin. Like, for example, even if you don't know what the job is, you want to be successful. I know you do. Like, so it's not about the job. What you want is to be successful, a leader. You want to pour into people. You want to uplift people. That's your actual purpose. What anyone can struggle with is like, what is the vehicle that allows me to do that, right? And so we confuse that way too freaking much, and that's what leads to unhappiness. I heard Alex Ramosi say this. He says sadness comes from feeling like you have no option, and anxiety comes from feeling like you have too many options. He says, so really the way you kind of balance that to get over sadness is to accept there's endless possibilities, and then to avoid anxiety means you just got to make a decision. What most people don't do in life, we love to avoid making a decision. And then what we'll blame it on is saying, oh my God, I don't know my purpose. So we sit in this la-la land of possibility and let life beat us up. That's it. Some people just say, I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to win with whatever's in front of me. That sucks.
That's well said. You talked about your transition from football to finance. I want to ask you, how were your first 5 years, starting your financial practice, getting clients? Talk to us about the ups and downs through that course of time.
It was a welcomed hell. And what I mean by that is, if you look at any career, there's an initial investment that must be made for greatness. A doctor must go through 4 years of med school, plus additional years of residency and fellowship to be a doctor. The dentist, 4 years of dentistry, likely 1 year of residency, whatever, or specialty they may go into. An attorney, 3 years of law school. So what it lets us know is there is a commitment and a price that must be paid to create at your craft.
A rite of passage.
Rite of passage, doggone right. And so I think what I see with most entrepreneurs is in the early years of their business, they find too much joy in saying I'm a business owner. Like I work for myself. No, you don't. Anybody who starts a business at first, they're not a business owner. They're still an employee to themselves. And I don't think most people accept that. And so as a result, that's why a lot of small businesses fail in the first year, because you think you have freedom and you think you have autonomy. No, you don't. You just traded a 9 to 5 for a 9 to 9. And so as a result, if you can't put in 24-hour type work, you really are not an entrepreneur. You like to say you are. Maybe you are self-employed. You're not an entrepreneur. And so I think many people who want to be leaders and business owners just really got to be clear on what price are they willing to pay. Because if you're not willing to pay that big price, you should just go ahead and say, I don't want a big reward. Because the age-old saying is, to whom much is given, much is required. So that direct correlation means the more I want, the more I got to go through. So my first 5 years were a reflection of that. It was not sleeping. It was being here in the office. I slept on this floor many a times on that couch back there. Because I was committed to the vision. And here's the funny part. I never got tired doing it. I was so excited in the pursuit of excellence. It drove me to wake up. In that first 5-year window of sacrificing lens, I was like, what is possible? So that's what I chose to do. So that's what my first 5 years looked like. It looked like med school plus residency. I condensed probably 10 years of education into 5. And I am thankful for it. And that's why we work with a lot of doctors and sophisticated professionals, investment managers, because what they can hear in me is not someone who's just offering, say, a solution. They can hear a surgeon that is tactical and very precise with his work. And they can trust that because of those early 5 years of sacrifice on top of sacrifice on top of sacrifice.
Padric, the financial surgeon. That's what they call you.
Financial surgeon. That's what a lot of the doctors we work with call me. I would say lately, though, as we've kind of gone into like a lot of engineering work, investment managers, I would say the term I love the most, even that is what a lot of people would say, I love architect. While I'm surgical in my work, I love engineering and architecting solutions. Being able to help people define what they want, engineer it out, and then understand where they are today, and then I'll architect the bridge in between. I love that.
How did you overcome that hump of being a young advisor? You don't have, you're not bald. You don't have a lot of gray hair. I don't think you have gray hair at all.
So what I would do when I would talk to people, I would lean into my youth. And at 28, I would tell people, say, hey, when they would ask me about my age, it would come up. And I'll say, hey, absolutely. It comes up often. And matter of fact, most people we work with find it as an advantage because at the end of the day, Mr. and Mrs. Client, whomever, while, I said, how old are you currently? They're like 65. How old is your advisor? They're like 65. I said, so when are you retiring? They're like next year. I said, when is he retiring? So that's
Gotcha.
true. Got you. So it's like, I actually lean into it to say, hey, the people we work with are actually 60, 70, 80. And what they love about the fact that I'm 28 is a simple fact that they will have continuity and clean succession so that now I can work with them, ensure that I'll be able to work with their children. I'm probably younger than children. So I actually use that to create the generational wealth play, which got me into higher markets, ultra high net worth and trust pretty fast. So I saw what was a disadvantage as an advantage. And I would just say from the minority side of it all, what that probably ended up doing at first was us building out a more diverse practice. And I would say being a minority made me sharper. I knew how I had to show up, 1, but 2, let's just say minorities are skeptical when it comes to money. So as I learned how to solve problems with skeptical people, when I started working with other cultures, let's say, who were less skeptical, I actually would win the client relationship. Because since I had to deal with the skepticism of minorities, I had to be on my stuff, which means I had to study and become very sharp to get people to see why we should be doing this. So as a result, when I started getting to some higher income markets, Black cultures, white cultures, Indian cultures, Asian, because I had to deal with the skepticism on the front end of people who didn't have much, I was so sharpened that when I could break someone's problems down, I gave them more than what their investment advisors were giving them. So now what I learned, a lot of other cultures, they would invest just because they know they needed to. That doesn't mean they knew what was going on. So now I walk into the room and I show them what's going on. The common response was, man, my advisor never broke this down. Thank you. How can we transfer everything to you? So I would just say, I think too often we focus on the disadvantage. The key is to eat the disadvantage and move on. So for example, Justin, when I would share this, and for you as my brother, and for you, all listeners today, think about this truth. Most of us say things like God is good, and then the rest of the time, our mind is on negative thoughts. Imagine if you can switch that narrative and spend 2% of your time on negative thoughts and 98% of your time wrestling with God. That's my 298 doctrine. The moment something pops up, I don't fight it. I agree with it. And the fact that I agree with it, it takes away the power of the thing itself. So now I can spend 98% of my time wrestling with God and the positive thoughts. So I think too many times we wrestle with our demons instead of wrestling with God. And that's what Jacob did. He wrestled with God till he got his blessing. So find joy in my mind wrestling with God. not asking, why is this happening? More like, show me your goodness. Walk me to my blessing. How are we going to overcome this? I can't wait for you to reveal to me the goodness of you in the land that is living. So just imagine, instead of, shying away from the negative thought, you can lean into it and then spend the rest of your time wrestling with God thoughts the same way you would a negative thought.
That's good. I want to, explore more about you and your clients. How do you allocate your day to day and ensure that you, talk to your clients, whether it's a weekly, monthly, bi-monthly calls? Like, how do you go about that? Because there's some advisors, they have so many clients, and there's some clients who don't get attention. And as a result, that can kind of hinder the relationship.
Twofold. That's a structural issue and that's a bad business. So what happens with a lot of advisory firms, they really want to keep more for themselves. And so as a result, what ends up happening is they don't reinvest. See, I'm not in this for cash flow. I'm in this for impact. So what I've done is I've reinvested to create structure. So we have a team that now, as we grow, it's not just me. Think about a doctor practice. Imagine if a doctor's office, everyone had to see the same doctor for everything to get done. Everyone would be sick. You need your nurses. You need your physician's assistant. You need the front desk. So in our firm, we have that. We have financial nurses. We have financial physician's assistants. We have the front desk. So as a result, when someone works with us, they're not just working with Pat. They're working with Crossroad Capital Partners. And so as a result, they go and check in at the front desk. They go sit with the nurse and have the analysis and the breakdown and the health reading. They go and sit down with my, top consultant and director of planning and breaking things down. So a lot of times they don't even need to hear from me. They're like, okay, I can go home now because we built out a firm that can serve. So I just think this is, as a business owner, knowing how to think, feel, and behave. And that's any business. Imagine a doctor's practice that doesn't hire a team. Well, he's going to run out of business fast or hit a real bottleneck. Because how can he serve and take care of everybody? By him or herself. That's it. The best doctors, him or her, what they're going to do is, man, as I grow, I'm going to hire. And as I grow, I'm going to hire another doctor. As I grow, I'm going to hire another doctor. And now I build an enterprise. So I think of myself less as a financial planner architect, and I think of myself more as a CEO executive visionary. And as this visionary, I'm investing in our practice, and I think of myself as a venture capitalist think tank, meaning I provide structure ideas to other founders, large, privately held businesses to executives of public companies, right? A lot of times I would say on our personal team, we work with privately held businesses anywhere between 5 to 300 million in revenue. That said, one of my partners that I get to partner alongside for more additional complex planning, we see companies with 50 million to 30 billion in revenue. And so when you do that and you work in that kind of a space, you can't serve that thinking small. So that's why we're able to partner with businesses, because I think as a business owner, because I run my own business. So that's what I meant earlier. Like, everyone's not an entrepreneur. Many people just self-employed people calling themselves a business owner. A business owner reinvests. A business owner manages, profit and loss statements. A business owner looks at expense ratios. A business owner determines where cash should go. Like, that's what it should look like.
And what are three of the most common financial mistakes you see a lot of people make?
Here you go. I tell people here's probably the 4 to 6 true key enemies of wealth. I list them in this order. The number one enemy to wealth is yourself. I say the biggest financial mistake I see people make is they lack discipline. Or they're afraid when things go down, so they make the wrong move. And now, like 2008, they sell out at a bottom, take all those losses that had they just kept their money there, it would all return. So number one is yourself. Also with yourself is, are your expenses higher than your income? Well, how can you build wealth if you got more going out than coming in? So
yeah.
Number one is yourself. Number two is a loss of earnings. Most people fail to realize that they're their most important asset. We're often so times busy chasing external success, we forget to realize that we're the most important investment. And so how can you reinvest in yourself and your skill set if you don't think of yourself as your best asset? And if you lose that income, that's going to blow everything up, because your earnings is going to fund all your investments. So that's number two. And then 3, 4, 5, 6 are basic practical economics. 3 will be time. The whole purpose of investing is delayed gratification. So when you build out a portfolio, the next biggest mistake I see is people put money in assets that are intended to send money to a different point in time. Meaning, like if I want to buy a house in 11 years, but I put the money in my 401k, it's not going to be there because I can't touch my 401k till I'm 60. So I often see a misalignment on a balance sheet of money going to the wrong account because they don't think about the time at which they need the money. The fourth one would be easily inflation. Most people keep sometimes too much in cash out of fear. And so as a result, they let inflation defeat them without putting up a fight. The next one be taxes. Oh man, this is where we play so strong. We excel at tax managed solutions because that's what everyone typically fails at. And so in that space, biggest mistake I see, people leave their money on the tax roller coaster and they get taxed when they earn the money. They get taxed when they put the dollar somewhere and it earns interest or it grows. So they're taxed on growth. They get taxed when they pull it out. They're taxed on spending, and then they're taxed on it when they die in their estate. So I would say not being aware of how much taxes eats up on a dollar over a lifetime, huge mistake. And then the last one would be the volatility of the markets. The biggest mistake I see here is people don't have a plan for it. It is guaranteed, like going back to high school, we are taught that, everything goes through a cycle. So truly, we should be accepting that it will go down, but we act like it's a surprise. So it is actually understood that market volatility is a guarantee. So that means it's not a risk. A risk is something that's uncertain, that's unknown. So if I know the market is going to go down, how can I call it a risk? The only risk is when it happens. So I think if people are prepared for that downturn in the market, by building up reserves to pull from when their portfolio is down, they just neutralize the threat of volatility hurting them. So those 6 enemies to wealth, people not having a plan for them is what creates very erratic behavior and fear.
That's well said. I wanted to ask you, like, this is kind of going back to your 5 years, first 5 years. How was it studying for those like licenses, obtaining the Series 7, 66, 63, 65, and then I know you got your CFP and other designations. How was it?
Man, if I'm being quite honest, just it was easy.
It was easy?
Think about this.
Yeah.
I think we lose a benchmark for hard. Me going through 2-a-day practices, that was hard.
Right.
Me going through 2-a-day practices while being a student, that was hard. Me getting cut from the NFL and watching my dream roll away, that was hard. So like when I look at that as my benchmark for hard, studying so I can be a great practitioner is pretty exciting. So that's actually what it looked like. And so when I was studying, I'll tell you what it felt like. It felt like I was playing football again.
Yeah.
Because I was in a pursuit of excellence. I was practicing and role-playing the knowledge and talking taxes and how to reduce them and how to structure accounts and how to move them. And I was practicing how to understand someone's goals so I can help them unpack their goals. Because I knew if I could help people understand their goals and see how they felt about money, we can architect solutions on how to create the outcome that they desire. And that to me was just the same thrill that I would get practicing when no one's watching so I can go get a sack on Saturday. So what I tell you in my transition to bring this home between sports and business, bro, I'm still playing sports. I just play it in a corporate office.
People can argue, hey, Pad, you always been a smart guy, growing up. No, I'm not a book guy. I'm more of a people person. It takes me a while to, get the information down. I find studying for these exams is difficult. Like, what would you say to those people?
You just haven't put in enough reps.
What does that look like?
I would say you haven't put in enough reps. Like in sports, Steph Curry is the best 3-point shooter because he put in more reps than everybody. The man would make 100 threes at the practice. And when he was in high school, he made 100 free throws. And he had to hit the bottom of the net or he wouldn't leave. Michael Jordan was practicing when no one was watching. Kobe was up early getting more practice sessions in. And so I think we're too lazy sometimes to call ourselves out on our laziness. And it's less about being a numbers person or a people person. It's just like, did I put enough reps in on my craft? I think I am a firm believer. It's like babies. Think about this. Watch this. If a baby was born in America or a baby was born in Santa Marta, it would determine the language they learn. It's not like it's a different person. It's about where they matriculated. So we don't realize it's not like we're born away. A baby isn't born speaking Spanish. A baby isn't born speaking English. A baby isn't born speaking French. They hear it, they dissect it, they learn it, they become it. So that teaches us about how we're wired. We literally can control our thoughts, which are thoughts that can wire everything else, which now allows us to alter who we are. So as a result, if we can just accept that as a basic truth, we are just too lazy to say, oh, I'm older now and learning is a little bit harder than when I was a baby. And I don't want to put that kind of effort in. And that's a personal problem. And that's why many people can resent life because they know they could have put the effort in. They just chose not to. So when they see someone else doing it, now it becomes, oh man, they're lucky. No, they just outworked you. And I would say I'm less of a numbers person. I am a worker. And because I'm a worker, I have become a numbers person. And because I'm a worker, I have become a people person. But I had to work on it. It was not natural. They say in the Bible, the harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few. And I just don't think people work hard enough at their craft to get the harvest.
When the clock hits 0, how does Padric Scott want to be remembered as?
Easy. I told my wife the day I die, what should go on my tombstone? That is, he was a light to the world. Padric was a light to the world. I want to be remembered as a light. The person that when you met him, you felt warm. The person that when you met him, you believed in yourself. The person that when you met him, the energy naturally pointed you to God to want to know him more. And that scripture, that God is the father of lights, and we too have been called to be a light. And, a light, it says, isn't hid. A light is put up for everyone to see, so that we can draw all men unto him. So that's easy. I want to be remembered as a light to the world.
Padric, that's inspirational, man. Being a light of the world. This is the Leader Diaries podcast where everyone has a story, and every story is a diary worth sharing. And don't forget to be present where your feet are being planted. Stay tuned for more episodes. Thanks.